Okay, welcome everyone to the first installation of the new series EFP Informs. We're excited to start this new dialogue with the community. This format, if you've been to some of our previous webinars, will be slightly different than those two, but the basic ground rules will be the same. So in particular, we have a nice group of panelists. For the sake of security and to prevent any, Zoom bombing or anything of that sort, we have disabled the ability for you all to disable or to enable your mics and videos. We've also restricted the general chat so that attendees cannot chat with one another. Again, this is just to prevent the potential for any Zoom bombing. As always, we have a Q&A box in the bottom. If throughout the conversation you have any questions that you'd like answered or feel that something needs to be clarified, feel free to submit your questions to that Q&A box rather than the chat box. As always, questions, you have the option to submit them anonymously or not. That's totally up to you. Depending on where the conversation takes us, we may also, poll you all to see what you all think. Again, your answers to these polls are, totally optional, and you have the option to answer them anonymously or not. We're again joined by two of my colleagues at the Economic Forecast Project, Daniel Cullen and Travis Saronic. The three of us will be working in the background to make sure everything runs smoothly, to answer any questions that you might have. And with that, I think I'd like to introduce someone who I think most of us know. He's a quite valuable member of our community, and I can't thank him enough for putting this together. The Executive Director of the Economic Forecast Project, Dr. Peter Rupert.
Great, thank you so much, Charlie. And as Charlie mentioned, we're changing the format a little bit. We're changing the format a little bit for this one. Normally, I get up and show 20 minutes of very depressing employment slides. So we all get the picture what's happened, and we decided to change the format so that we're going to talk to people in this series who are the people who are really informing and making policy for our city, county, and other localities. And so that's the idea, sort of getting right up front where we can talk to them and not wait for weeks on end to find out what policies are shaping. So with that, I'd like to introduce our two other panelists for today. Paul Casey, who's City Administrator, Clerk and Treasurer of the City of Santa Barbara. And I'll let them talk a little bit about what they do when they come on. And Bob Stout, who's the President of Downtown Santa Barbara, owner of Wildcat, and has been around Santa Barbara for a while. And so welcome, Paul and Bob. Great for you to be here. And the way the format's going to work today, I'm going to ask some questions. It's going to be really, I hope I'm just not asking questions and getting answers. It should be a dialogue between these two people who are working hard to reopen our city. So with that, I would like to start with a little bit of an overview. And feel free to unmute yourselves, Bob and Paul. So we'll just dig right in. So Paul, we've seen the governor back in January come out with a budget that showed about roughly a $5 billion, $6 billion surplus. Everybody was happy. And then just a couple months later, he comes out with a $54 billion deficit. It's obviously going to affect many parts of our environment, social services, budget cuts, income cuts, you name it. How are you seeing that come through to you into the city, and what's going on with the city budget?
Yeah, good afternoon, Peter. Good to see you, and thanks for having me on. And hi to everyone out there who I can't see your faces but are watching. I wish we could be doing this in person. Someday we will again. This whole COVID pandemic issue and the stay-at-home orders has so many ripple effects across so much of society. It's impacting everyone, and it's impacting government finances severely as well. You're seeing a lot of discussion nationwide about what to do about that. Like you said, the state has gone upside down from their budget standpoint, and that impacts education funding severely, impacts that social safety net that the state provides, and a whole other host of issues. And then the same with the city. We're hit severely as well, since we get money from sales tax and bed tax in particular that are really getting hit from the stay-at-home order that we're just now starting to kind of come out from. So it's a real challenge. I've mentioned publicly, over the span of these 2 fiscal years that we're in the middle of, it's about a $30 million hit to our general fund, in addition to hits to a lot of our enterprise funds like the waterfront and the airport and other departments as well. So it's hitting us on all levels, and it's a challenge. Thankfully, we did have reserves, and so that is helping us to weather the storm a little bit better, but it's a big challenge.
So when you say it's hitting some of the enterprises, in what sense? Is this job loss things you're talking about, or you're going to reduce services? What does that really mean?
Yeah, and we're working through that right now. We have to come up with a budget by the end of June. As local government, we have to do a balanced budget. We don't get to print money, and so we have to balance our books. And so we are looking at service reductions. We're looking at this point not filling vacancies for the most part. We did let our hourly staff go. That got a lot of media attention. Those were folks who staff the parking lots or run our recreation programs, which were completely shut down. By doing so, it allowed them to qualify for unemployment benefits. Otherwise, we weren't going to be able to pay them. So in some ways, it was in their interest to be able to access unemployment. And then we hope to bring them back as those services come back online. At this point, I think because we have the reserves and looking at reducing services, vacant positions, deferring capital, and prudent use of reserves, I don't think we're looking at any substantial layoffs in that regard. But we're also going to have to monitor this really carefully as we keep going, as conditions change for us financially.
Right. So I know you can't print money, but I'll give you an example. So it's something called Ithaca dollars. So Ithaca dollars started back in I want to say the 70s or 80s, and the city of Ithaca, New York, just decided that they needed lots of things that people with low incomes couldn't really provide. So they printed up Ithaca dollars, and the Ithaca dollars could only be used in shops that would take them in Ithaca. And you could go mow somebody's lawn, they would give you Ithaca dollars, and then you could go to and they traded just because everybody's willing to take them.
Yeah.
But
That's great.
It's probably not going to work here. But so Bob, you're the president of downtown Santa Barbara. How long have you had that post?
It'd be 1 year and 2 months, Peter. Nice to see you.
Great to have you here. And again, when we brought Jason Harris in as an economic development person, it was to kind of like, we had a few vacancies on State Street, and you came in as downtown Santa Barbara. And you had an agenda to sort of get things back and going, and now you see this pandemic hit, and basically everything shuts down. And so what have you seen so far in terms of businesses that are going out of business? I know Plum Goods has announced that they're having some trouble, and love to see them come back. Nordstrom's gone, so it's going to be a different shape downtown. So what is it you're seeing currently, and what are you going to see in the next few months, do you think?
So I think Nordstrom's was kind of headed out anyway. And I think some of the stores have been struggling for a while. So you're seeing a little of that, I think, independent of COVID. Certainly, COVID's a bombshell. I mean, it's a bomb that hit State Street and the whole city. Like Paul said, this is the whole state, the whole country. I think what we're seeing downtown right now is some enthusiasm based on some of the steps that the city has taken. And I'm, for the first time in about 2 weeks, a little bit more than 2 weeks, I'm seeing people actually starting to be a little bit excited. And but there's no doubt, I think we might have had, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, 10 to 11% vacancy downtown, the storefronts, and that's definitely going to go up. And I think that's a challenge, but I think it's also kind of parallel to the changing retail environment that's been happening certainly before COVID.
No, that's for sure. I mean, are you aware of other closures that you've seen out there, or people have been talking, especially if they're thinking about, you know, the PPP program, something of the CARES, as that starts to run out, you know, some of the smaller businesses that were hanging on to begin with, as you mentioned, you know, what does it look like to you in terms of survival?
Well, I've got a little restaurant called The Little Kitchen. We're right in the thick of that, so it's a hot topic. The Paycheck Protection Plan, the PPP, has given us temporary help. It allows us to, if we qualified for one, and a lot of small businesses have, it allows you to keep your employees for 8 weeks, but you have to start paying them as soon as you got it. So many of us got those as much as 4 or 5 weeks ago. So you're going to see, I'm afraid, a lot of businesses that have a little bit of false hope because the PPP gave them this money, and they're thinking, well, we might as well open because we're paying our folks to, you know, just unemployment basically. But I think there will be a bleed out or fallout among a lot of restaurants and small businesses. But in that, it does create some opportunity. And I think we're looking forward to nobody's going to really be successful. Nobody's going to come out of this until downtown and in the whole city, really. We talk about downtown because I'm president of the downtown organization. Right. But the whole city people need to feel safe to come back out. So we need to create an environment that people feel safe to come out. And once that starts to happen, and assuming, you know, we can keep it safe, and that's the goal, and that's everyone's intention, then I think you'll start to see a not so gradual coming back of downtown businesses. But it's not going to be 2 months. It's going to be a lot longer than that till we're back to normal. Maybe for most people, maybe as long as next spring or summer.
But if I could jump in, Peter.
Yeah, sure, Paul.
One of the challenges, I think, to all of us online and our neighbors is locals have to support our businesses right now. They are in desperate straits, and as we do the reopening, completely agree with Bob about having to do it in a safe manner and have people feel comfortable. But tourism is still being discouraged across the state. That's one of our big drivers to support businesses. So it's really incumbent upon locals to support our businesses and get them through this kind of restart process as best we can. Right.
Well, that actually is a good segue into a poll. So Zoom has this ability to do a poll, and Charlie's going to bring up the poll that everyone can answer. If you're on your computer, I guess on your phone or iPad, you know, you can answer the poll, and then we can see it in real time what's going on. And hopefully this will be useful for you know, that kind of thinking. Like, it's up to us as a community to support our local businesses and move out there. So here's the poll. First question is, if the economy opened tomorrow and all the CDC guidelines, the state guidelines, county guidelines are met in a virus safe way, would you go to, and then you check all that will apply. Would you go to a dine-in restaurant? Would you go to a bar? You can check any one of those you would like: brewery or wine tasting, indoor theater, indoor concert, outdoor theater, outdoor concert, gym, nail or hair salon. I guess this thing scrolls down, yeah. Retail store, including clothing, electronics, the zoo, or none of the above. Would you just feel too uncomfortable to go to any of these places? So if you just take a minute to click on the ones that you feel comfortable going to. And then the second question asks basically the same thing. That is, if all the guidelines are taken in a virus safe way, but now State Street is open to restaurants to spill out onto the sidewalks and the street. It's closed to traffic. Dining and drinking facilities are allowed on the street or at parking lots. Would you then be comfortable going to a dine-in restaurant, bar, brewery, wine tasting, etc.? So please take a moment just to click on the ones where you'd feel safe to go over the next few weeks. If everything opened tomorrow, there was no restrictions at all. And then question number 3, just in general and independent of the current pandemic, would you be more willing to visit State Street, to hang out there if it were closed to traffic permanently, or at least some parts of it. So if you can take a little time to answer those questions, we can give it to Bob and Paul, and they can run with it to wherever the committees they need to talk about how important this is to all of us. So while they're doing the survey, the poll, a few more questions. So, one thing that I've worried about closing State Street is kind of the, how equitable it would be to just close, one block or two blocks. And we heard from council the other day, they were thinking of closing the 500 block, I believe, and the 1200 block, to give those restaurants the ability to serve outside. So a couple of questions there for both Paul and Bob. Is how deeply involved is the ABC in this? I know that the city can open the streets or close the street to traffic. That doesn't mean you can, drink on the sidewalk or outside. So both of you, I think, have talked about this a lot. So response to that?
Yeah, maybe I'll start and then Bob can chime in. Council had a really good meeting and conversation on Tuesday about the State Street question, and their direction to me was, at a minimum, let's close a couple blocks of State Street. But they were very clear to give me the flexibility, working with my staff, to consider a longer closure. And we haven't made a final decision yet. We're going to really quickly. I think we're probably going to go with that longer version because we're not sure what just doing a couple blocks gets us kind of in the short term. Let's try it. Let's get it open. And one of the reasons for getting it open is also to give people a sense of safety, a sense of space, so that as we talked about feeling safe coming back downtown, if the street is open to pedestrians, we're not concentrated on sidewalks. We have more ability to kind of take over the whole width of the right-of-way there. And then that gives us the flexibility in working with restaurants who want to come out into the public space about where to do it. Is it out on the street, or is it more on the sidewalk as pedestrians can go on the street? Those are the types of details we have to work out. ABC, from what I'm hearing, Bob's much more closer to it than I am, but I'm hearing positive things about ABC being flexible and trying to work with restaurants and other establishments to get them back open. But what's Bob hearing?
Yeah, first off, kudos to Paul and the city. Like I said, somebody asked me a question. I said in 40 years since I started my first restaurant downtown, I haven't seen the city be this wide open, proactive, and helpful. Of course, the rejoinders are it takes a pandemic, but so be it. We're in a pandemic, and the city's really responded. A lot of the restaurant and bar owners, and we're really looking at in-store dining happening in phase 2B, which is about to kick in, I believe. And in-store dining would necessitate about half the capacity. In other words, you have to move about half your tables to keep people 6 feet away. And that's what we all want to do. We want people to feel safe, and we don't want to see any spikes. So to do that, to supplant that dining indoors, outdoors, is a great idea. And there's three ways really that the city, I think, is going to allow restaurants to do that. And one's expand on the sidewalks. You got to leave. If the street's closed, then really, I think we'll be able to go pretty much right to the curb. That's great. I mean, you can imagine going down State Street and just seeing Arigato or whatever restaurant you go to, Natural Cafe. Now you have dining all the way out to the curb. It makes it very equitable for everybody on State Street, and that was one of the major reasons I think the city didn't limit it to 1 or 2 blocks. So in that sense, very fair. It allows, in the Funk Zone in particular, but everywhere, if you have private property, and of course you've got a easement or a proper use of that, permission to use that from your property owner, then you can expand into private property. If you think of Lokita on Lower State Street, again, that state won't be closed. So down there, they can expand into that little private parking lot between them and the project, if you're familiar with that. And that's just really natural for them. And the final option is to use a parklet idea. And Paul can probably talk more about this, but the parklet idea is in place all over the country, and it's, of course, very popular in Europe. It's to temporarily replace on-street parking. Say you have two 15-minute zones in front of your restaurant, and your sidewalk's too skinny. A lot of sidewalks, a lot of side streets, I'm sorry, in Santa Barbara kind of fit that bill. They don't have the wide sidewalk, and the street's not going to be closed. So what do those restaurants do? Half the restaurants downtown are on the side streets. So to allow these parklets is really progressive. I think it's time we try that, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how that works out. So again, kudos to the city for really opening the windows and the doors to let us do our thing and try to bring people back downtown.
So speaking of that, Paul, so last night, I guess the county health gave you a little bit of a green light to move ahead with maybe explain a little bit about the details of that, what business owners have to do, and what we should be seeing over the next few days.
Yeah. So it's moving quick. It's really the speed of all this and things changing kind of almost on an hourly basis. It's hard for me, who's spending all my time on it, to keep up sometimes. So the governor is still in control. The governor has the statewide order, and he is releasing that in increments. And so he announced that he will allow counties to prepare a plan that they present to the state if they meet certain health metrics that would allow us to go into the next phase of phase 2, which was really just in-room dining with restaurants and retail. Just those two kind of key components, swap meets as well, but those two key components. And then they left it up to the counties to have to prepare a plan that the public health officer and the board of supervisors needed to sign off on. All credit to the county. We had already been working on it. They had had a countywide effort with lots of input. And so they were ready to go on a moment's notice. And we're at the board Tuesday morning. The board approved it. Got it up to the state, and the state approved it Wednesday night. So the state moved really quick. So credit to them as well. And then the county health officer needed to amend his local order to kind of implement it, and he did that just this morning. So we're ready to go, and the process is for both businesses that were already open and restaurants and retail that want to reopen, they need to go to the county website, and the county's putting out a press release. Please go look for it. Go to the county's website. I think it's readysbc.org. But they have a checklist, kind of a self-certification process that businesses need to go through. And it's the best practices about how to operate your business safely. They've got links to the state website for your specific type of business that tells you what you need to do to be able to operate safely. So you go to the county website. It's a really pretty straightforward form. You go through, if you're able to meet, you check and self-certify. And if you're not doing any real physical changes, you hit send at the end, and then you print out a document that you're going to place in your window to show that you've self-certified and get up and running. So it's about as simple and straightforward a process to confirm, though, that people are operating safely. So that's happening today. So we'll see and how fast and capable people are able to reopen up. How do they get their staff back? Do they have enough food on hand? All those sorts of logistics. But it's pretty straightforward, and I think credit for getting that up and running, and so we're ready to go.
So Bob, what do you hear on that side of things?
Well, every time I look down at my phone, I'm trying to get my restaurant and my bar, for that matter, kind of put back together. I've been pretty busy in Paul's world the last couple of weeks at the downtown organization. But every time I look down at my phone, there's a ding, and it's from the county health or it's from the alcoholic beverage control. And it's pretty amazing. I mean, the fluidity of this is right. I don't know how Paul does his job, because this thing just changes all the time. But I do think that it's really changed for the better most of the way. There's been a few discrepancies, but for the most part, I'm seeing I've probably gotten 20 text, phone calls, everything today saying, I heard we can open. My understanding is that if you're a food establishment at this point, you can reopen if you self-certify. There's, as far as your expansion to be able to serve and create more seating outdoors, I guess, Paul, my question on that, and probably one of the first days we haven't emailed or talked to each other, so I got you live here, man. Don't worry, I'll be good. I'll be good. I know that Anthony Wagner and others are working, like you said, in conjunction with the alcoholic beverage control and with the health department. So if I have a restaurant and I want to do a parklet, that's going to be a little different, self-certify. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, so Council approved, staff and we have a business task force that we've been getting a lot of really great input from, kind of the citywide multi-prong approach based upon the different unique circumstances of every restaurant. If you think of the city of Santa Barbara, what works downtown on State Street is much different than on Milpas or on Outer State Street or any other commercial area. So we have to be kind of flexible with different approaches for different situations. We're working as furiously as we can. You know, that got approved Tuesday night, and then boom, Wednesday night, go. And so the parklets are the one that we need to make sure that we're thoughtful about it because of the safety involved, about putting people out on the street next to an active street that has automobile traffic. And so our traffic engineer will want to look at that and be careful and comfortable. We already kind of publicly said that a really busy 4-lane street, putting an eating area right there next to that amount of traffic, A, I'm not sure it's really a desirable place to sit, and B, we might be concerned with the safety, but quieter streets, yeah, let's try it. And then State Street, it's complicated. You know, yes, let's open up State Street, get the pedestrians in, let the restaurants spill out. And so under your scenario, Bob, you know, Arigato goes and takes over the entire sidewalk, but then how does the access to the neighboring retail work? And how do you do it from an accessibility standpoint without having to step over the planters and landscaping? And so how do we make sure that retail has the access they need while meeting the needs of the restaurants as well? And so those are all the types of things we're figuring out on the fly, and we want to get to yes quick, and we'll adjust as we go along. It may not be perfect the first time, but it's when you get into the details, it's a little more complicated than it first might seem.
So Paul, safe to say, I mean, everybody's been asking me, when is State Street closing? Safe to say, once some of these things are worked out, and maybe in a week. I mean, I heard somebody say, oh, it's going to be open this week, and I'm kind of hoping not, but at the same time, I know you've been gung-ho and you've been waiting to throw open the floodgates. So I commend you for that. I'm just curious.
You know, it's a good question. I don't have a final answer. I'm sure some of my favorite reporters might be watching right now, waiting for the shock headline, you know, that they can quote me on again. I'm meeting with my staff tonight. They've been working furiously, and we're going to make a decision about whether to be open for the weekend or not. My bias, without having had a chance to talk to them, let's get it open. You know, if it takes a while for restaurants to get their feet under them and kind of embrace the street, let's at least get the openness of the street aspect out. And again, it's kind of a public health reason why you want to open the street. So as people do come back downtown, retail, I think, can open up fairly easy, hopefully. And hopefully people can support our local retail. And in doing so, if we have a little more space to walk, so we're not so much shoulder to shoulder, that might make people feel more comfortable and willing to come downtown. So my bias is to do it sooner rather than later and work out the details as we go along. But that's not an announcement. We haven't pulled the trigger yet.
So no, the details are, as always, are the tough part. You know, when you say things like, you know, the street's going to be closed. So this is a personal thing, but you know, I've heard a lot from cyclists that if State Street is closed, you know, what are we going to do about a bike lane? Because obviously you can't, you know, Anacapa and Chapala are not very useful for cycling. So, you know, there's so many issues that, you know, once you decide something, you know, all these things have to be taken care of. But are you also going to allow like food carts out there? Like, can Bob take something from the little kitchen and put it out in the street if the street's closed, stuff like that, or you haven't even gotten that far yet?
Haven't got that far, but we're open to all types of ideas. We do need to maintain kind of a clear path of travel and fire access, you know, and kind of some of that basic public safety stuff. But yeah, we'll figure it out, and we want to work with restaurants to help them to be successful. So we'll see what we can do.
Great. So now let's just see if people are willing to come.
Yeah.
You know, so
yeah.
I think the polls closed. Charlie can show.
Oh boy.
Okay, so what do we have? The economy open tomorrow. 58% said they would be willing to go to a restaurant, a dine-in restaurant. So 58%, 32% to a bar. I should have said, how about a quiet bar where nobody's yelling at each other and shouting, you know, but brewery or wine tasting, indoor theater. Obviously we knew this answer. I mean, thinking about theaters or indoor concerts, only 15%. Outdoor theater, concert, you know, 50%. I can ask Paul later what they're thinking about outdoor concerts or outdoor some music. Gyms, they're going to be hurting for a while, obviously. Nail or hair salon, 51%. Retail store, about half the people said they would go to the zoo. Again, my view of this, now if you close State Street to traffic, you can see that the numbers went up substantially. We went up to 75%. The people would be willing to go now that there's more space out there. Same with bars, wine tasting. So it looks like everything here, obviously except for indoor theaters, which has nothing to do with opening State Street, unless Paul's going to put a drive-in theater right down on the corner or somewhere. But
Good idea.
Exactly. People have talked about
Great
doing
idea.
kind of a drive-in theater in a parking lot, showing up on a screen and let the
sure.
restaurants serve people. We're going to be creative.
Yeah. And then in general, people would be more willing to go down to State Street, even if not worried about the pandemic. 73% said, they'd be more willing to go down to State Street. So I think, that's fairly indicative. I don't think anything surprised me there.
And that's kind of my attitude right now is, let's try stuff. And, if it's not perfect, let's have a little patience with ourselves as a community, but, let's try things. Let's go.
Right.
Peter, I'm really curious. I'm curious how many people responded to that. It's a great little poll.
Charlie should know the answer to that.
So we had 212 responses, which is, roughly an 80% response rate for those who are attending.
That's, I think the interesting thing that I saw there, Paul, was I think only between 17 and 24 maybe percent of people were not wanting to come downtown. And of course, that all categories seem to increase, except the zoo with State Street being open. So we got 4% of the people who are going to go to the zoo to come downtown. But I think it's really encouraging to see the difference that opening the streets, the sidewalks, and I think outdoor dining is going to be huge. If restaurants really follow through and do what they need to do and put not the center of their table 6 feet apart, but the customers 6 feet apart, I know I'll feel like coming down and having dinner and I think it'll be a really good idea. When you see people, it looks like the town's coming alive just driving by. It's what I love about parklets, because they could drive down the street and you could drive down West Figueroa, and you've got Norton's Deli, you've got Los Arroyos, Savoy Deli. And it's just, if you saw a parklet out there, or if you saw a parklet in front of Trattoria Victoria or Cadario with little Italian strung lights, I mean, you wouldn't think you're in Little Italy, but as far as being able to travel right now, it might be the best next thing.
And I want to clarify something that I've heard a lot talked about on the State Street idea. We all kind of have our preconceived notions of what it means for restaurants to open up on State Street. I think some of us think, oh, you put the tables in the street, leave the sidewalks open. And others think, no, you let the tables take over the sidewalk and push the pedestrians onto the street. And it's really going to be up to talking to the restaurants about what they think operationally. The initial reaction we got from them is they would like to keep their operations as close to their door as possible. And so just going out into the street was not necessarily their first desire. I think it was more spilling onto the sidewalk. And so that's where we need to work with them, because they're the ones who have to operate and make this work. And so we need to be careful and listen to that.
Yeah, Paul, I think one of the main things there was since the alcoholic beverage control, and again, in my many years doing this, I have never gotten an email from the alcoholic beverage control saying, yes, you can do to-go cocktails. I thought I was dreaming. My wife, nudged me, and I said, oh, honey, I was having a dream. But this is so indicative, I think, of how serious this pandemic is. And in a sense, the leadership that we've gotten from the state. At first, it was like shelter in place. Come on, this is tough. And whatever, in Georgia, they're doing this and they're doing that. But I think most of us felt a sense of let's do what's right, let's be safe. So the fact that Governor Newsom, or the fact that the state alcoholic beverage control and the county health have all in really short time pulled together to try to make this easier. And I see the city, Paul and others, trying to do the same thing. So I think the more that they can make this temporary permit process, which I believe Paul's kind of under, not covered, but under the control of an emergency recovery ordinance of sorts. Do you want to speak to that? Because it's temporary.
Yeah. So the council gave me authority to act quickly rather than having to wait for their action on Tuesdays. And so I think that's their commitment to us trying to be a nimble organization. And so that's our desire on this as well. I do feel it's important just to pause briefly that we still have a pandemic going on. And so, we got to be careful not to get over exuberant that, yay, things are back, let's just go full throttle. We still got a real serious challenge. I think the governor had to move because I think the public was getting frustrated, and he'd kind of gotten the most out of he could with the stay-at-home order. But I think we got to be careful and smart so that we don't have a real bloom of cases locally as well, so that we can kind of maintain coming out of this in steps. And I just think it's important just to kind of remember to check that, because sometimes it's easy to get excited.
No, you're exactly right about that. And what we've forgotten about, I think I mentioned in the last webinar we did, that there was a big pandemic in 57, 58, which killed 116,000 Americans, and there was one in 68 through 70 that killed another 100,000. So the one in 68, 69, it turns out that most of the world had more deaths during a second wave of the pandemic than the first wave. So you're right, we really have to make sure these are done virus safe. And both of you know how many amazing entrepreneurs we have out there in the business world, in the restaurant world, and bar world. I mean, they pivoted themselves quickly to do whatever they needed to do. And so, my hope always is, they'll figure it out. You give them the space, they'll figure it out. Now, I've been to many cities, some of which have, tables more in the street, and the people walk by the sidewalk. So they're in between the restaurant, but then they get to see inside what's going on. Other places, no, it's just jammed up against the thing, and you walk on the street. Both of them work, right? They're different, but they'll figure it out. One question that it's hard to deal with right now, but both of you have worked hard on homeless issues, and with the Supreme Court ruling that the homeless can't be moved unless we have a place to put them. How is that affecting, Bob? What do you see downtown, the homelessness, and it's more like a city and county how to deal with them, but what are you seeing?
I've been downtown more than ever, really, just because I've been walking the street with my tape measure and my mask, and checking out where people could go and trying to get people excited about this idea of expanding out onto the sidewalks or wherever streets. I've seen a lot of homeless. Amy closed her Plum Goods, and the next day there was not just somebody sleeping there, but they had a full-on tent. It looked like I wanted to find out if they'd gone to REI. It was pretty impressive. But there's been a lot, but I think Paul will agree to this. Whenever we have something like farmers market, or I can't say a cruise ship right now, can I? No. But when we have a bunch of people coming to town, or just a busy Friday night in the bars, or a busy night in the 1200 block at the restaurants, whatever, we don't notice the homeless and the transient so much. People feel safer because at the end of the day, homelessness is part of our modern world. I mean, we have a real inequity in people's incomes, and there's going to be a lot of people that are struggling. And our city does a great job of trying to outreach to these folks and find them shelter. A lot of them don't want shelter. We know that. And those folks, you can't make them go into shelters. And we have a Mediterranean climate, which is great for outdoor dining. And it's also great for sleeping outside. So I think it's a challenge, but I think the more we activate it and we get people on the streets, especially if they're outdoors eating, drinking, then I really think that people won't notice so much. They'll feel safer, and it won't be like it has been the last 2 months. It's really been unusually bad, but I realized that it's been that way because it didn't really matter. Nobody was downtown anyway.
Right.
And we're, terribly aware and sensitive to it. It's such a tough issue. It's a tough societal issue. We were under guidance during the pandemic from the federal government, the CDC, not to disrupt homeless encampments and such. And part of that was so that they weren't moving around in case they were infected, they're not spreading it. Also a way, if they happen to get tested, you kind of know where they are to go back and deal with that. and that was hard. But we know State Street is starting to reopen up. We have a really good outreach team in CityNet that has been very effective at reaching people, and so they are hitting State Street hard right now. Our police are going to be back out there as well, and so we're going to try to get people to where they need to be and get State Street ready to welcome people back.
Got the red shirt ambassadors have been out regularly, and I. Though they're not, police, and they have radios, but they're just they're younger people, but they look official. And again, they give anybody walking down the street that might be feeling a little like what's going on, a sense that somebody else is there. And they're really helpful, and that's a program that Paul and the city helped fund several years back. I believe it's through the parking department, and folks there do a really, really good job. If you've got a problem with a homeless or a problem like that, you just call either the downtown organization, or if it's a homeless issue, you call directly to the ambassador line, and somebody comes out.
It's interesting that both from the federal and state government, the one area where we have gotten more money is to try to address homeless issues. And so that means we're going to be able to fund these outreach teams a little more aggressively, which is good, and try to get people into the help and services that they need.
Okay, so I want to open it up to some questions from the attendees, but before that, I mean, I know we spent a lot of time on State Street, but our city's bigger than State Street. Our city has Milpas and Upper State Street, and has all kinds of things. So I just want to be, everyone should be cognizant that no one's leaving those areas alone. That I think the city is thinking about many things around the different streets.
Exactly. Thank you very much. That's why we kind of came up with that menu of options to work with restaurants. And when you get outside of the downtown, I think looking at the private property or surface parking lots that people might have is going to be something that people can take advantage of, and hopefully pretty quick with the property owner's consent. So correct. We have a variety of options to try to meet different needs throughout the community, because we want to support all of our businesses all across the town.
And then if people have questions after this, Bob, I guess they can go to the info at the downtown Santa Barbara and get some help, some questions that they might have, where to go. Same with the city, has those facilities.
Right, Peter. We just hired a interim executive director, Robin Elander, and I think first off, people could go to downtownsb.org or downtown Santa Barbara. Just Google it, you'll find it. And we have our social media managers put a lot of stuff on there. I know Nina Johnson's done a lot with the city. There's a lot of websites you can access, and a lot of information out there.
And if you're a restaurant, we want you to contact us and let us work with you on your specific needs. It's not something that we can just put out a single policy and it works for everyone. It's going to take kind of direct connection with us, working with the restaurateur to make it happen. And then I don't have a sense of what the demand is going to be. Again, we're such a tourism town that really adds to kind of that business support from a demand standpoint and the comfort level. This is a certain segment of the community that's on this webinar. How does the rest of the community feel about coming back out? It's just a lot of unknown, and we're just starting it, so we'll see.
No, it is. It's certainly the unknown, and as I've always said, and I think everyone agrees with that. If you build a downtown for locals, the tourists will love to come. They would, if you build it for the tourists, they may not come and I might not come, So I think, making it safe and comfortable for the local residents is really the goal. But so now we have some questions, Travis, that you can either let Bob or anybody can answer for sure.
Yep. I'm just going to toss these up. Whoever, thinks they've got a good response, debate amongst yourself. First one's from an anonymous attendee. Who in the city should restaurants contact with questions on how they can utilize the sidewalk or parking lots in this discussion about opening it up?
Yep. You can email Jason Harris, who's our economic development manager, and he's got a team that he's working with. So depending upon which part of town, we're kind of setting up that staffing infrastructure. You can always just email me directly and I'll get in the right hands as well. So my email address is pcasey, PCASEY, at santabarbaraca.gov.
Okay, next one, Susan Goodell asks, many other communities are requiring masks or facial coverings to be worn in businesses. Will this be part of the plan for reopening State Street for non-food establishments? Is that already the case? I feel like
Correct.
I've heard it's already, okay, that's already the case.
Already the case in the city of Santa Barbara that if you're going to be in an area where people are congregating, that you're required to wear a mask. And and remember, the mask is really a courtesy to other people as well. And so I would encourage people to wear the mask. Let's not have mask wars in Santa Barbara, please. Let's be respectful. And yeah.
I'd like to add to that, downtown Santa Barbara, our staff got in touch, our staff, our limited staff before we got Robin Elander and his executive director, really did a good thing. They reached out and they got 2,500 masks donated, not surgical. I mean, they're just the simple mask, but they got 2,500 donated and bought some too, which kind of allowed us to then get the subsequent donation. And our staff's been handing those out to the retailers and the restaurants on State Street to make sure that their staff has enough so that they can change them through the day. They're not wearing one too long, that kind of thing.
All right, next one is about, I guess, alcohol. And apparently a lot of businesses are now allowing individuals to like drive up and purchase alcohol and take it home in ways that I guess wasn't happening before. Nicole Keel asks, have we seen any rise in incident rates for like traffic violations or drinking and driving as a result of this? And I guess I would add more generally, how has this been working? Has this been seen as sort of like a success story, I guess, for these establishments?
So the Alcoholic Beverage Control has issued 5 letters of relief. The first one was sent out to all licensees, liquor license holders, and it basically, the first one said that if you're in conjunction with delivering food, or you can basically deliver cocktails or alcohol. So if you're a restaurant, you like a Harry's or Joe's or whatever, not Joe's, they weren't open, then you can have sealed containers and take them. The second or third letter from the ABC, not surprisingly, was a warning that establishments need to take this more seriously. They couldn't have DoorDash or any of the other delivery services deliver them and take money for them. So they got a little tighter, which was probably a good thing. What I've seen a lot is people going somewhere and, getting to-go food and getting some to-go, cocktails or wine and sitting someplace and imbibing. And, I know there's certain places, I think the Mission Lawn for one is, I think you can actually drink legally there. I'm pretty sure Paul can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know how many people have been to the Mission Lawn, but people are really practicing safe distancing. And it's the closest thing to a city square in Europe that I've seen in Santa Barbara in years. It's great.
Yeah. And we haven't seen any notable increase of alcohol-related incidents. That was part of the first question. I will say we've seen incidents of speeding and just people with empty streets driving really unsafely. We had a horrific accident up on Cliff Drive as one example. So we need to be careful.
Next one is, and I'm sorry, these kind of questions are jumping around. It's sort of because of the free-flowing format of the conversation. It kind of these are how these questions are rolling in. Lisa Rivas asks, will there be an increased number of bike racks during State Street closures? So assuming, car traffic is slower, I might want to go downtown. I have a bike, but where am I going to put it?
Great question. That's something we need to look at. I don't have all those details worked out yet, but most likely, yes.
I asked the question of Rob Dayton, Paul's city transportation manager, and that was one of my main concerns is if you close all of State Street and you got a bunch of, kids riding their bikes thinking, wow, State Street closed. What happens when they are on State Street and they get to Korea, which is a really, as we all know, all the cross streets. And Rob told me, which somewhat definitely made me feel better, that there would be, I believe, and Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, the traffic lights coming east and west would all be red, blinking. And I think he said there might be those portable stop signs in the middle of the street. I think the portable stop signs, just those ones you could, pull up and take home with you. Kidding. Those I think would be really helpful because then when you're driving, you see that. And I think that'll add to safety. I've already seen on my way back home in the Mesa, I saw State Street, I saw groups of bike riders. So the word's kind of out. I saw maybe 20 young kids, you know, and all ages riding their bike down State Street. So even though it's not closed yet, I think the word's getting out. It's going to be really interesting and fun and hopefully safe to see.
Well, you know, at UCSB, you know, we sometimes between classes, it takes 5 minutes to get across the bike path. But you know, everybody respects it. Everybody respects what you're supposed to be doing. They stay on the bike path, and if you're caught riding a bike outside the bike path for a student, you know, it's $120 fine or $140 some fine, you know, and so higher than that. But they really, you know, everybody respects, you know, what's going on, both the pedestrians and the cyclists, I have to say. So, okay, Travis.
Carol Van Sand asked, and this is sort of a detailed question, but what is Jason's email and contact information? You can repeat it now, but I'd like to perhaps announce that we can put all this information on our website as well, if we want one localized source of that. So I guess we don't have to answer it now, but we'll get the information from Paul and we'll post it on the EFP COVID-19 website. We've got a resource link section.
J Harris. So it's jharris@santabarbaraca.gov.
Carl Hutterer says he's interested in Stearns Wharf. Restaurants there simply don't have the opportunity that perhaps State Street restaurants might to spill onto the sidewalk and perhaps the street. Is there options being discussed for them?
Like I said, it's almost a unique situation for every restaurant once you get outside of State Street. And so yes, if you are interested in some sort of outdoor option, contact us. We'll work with you. We want to be flexible and open. Maybe we lose a couple parking spaces or something. I think that's a sacrifice we got to be willing to take in this interim period. And again, one thing we haven't emphasized, this is to kind of get restaurants back on their feet and get retail up and owning again. Hopefully, as we progress through these stages of reopening, restaurants will be able to fully open inside without the distancing limitations. And so then we can kind of readjust as we go along. But I think in this immediate stuff, we want to be really flexible and creative. And so contact us, let's talk.
And my travels around, just traveling around the last couple of weeks, I'd have to say on State Street and the side streets, and I can't speak to Stearns Wharf, although I have an idea there actually. Private parking lots can be used. I don't know if that's a city lot, but if they have a valet area that they use, that'd be a great opportunity. But they got an ocean view. They should be happy. I'm just kidding.
So there's a couple questions that are kind of dispersed throughout this Q&A about phase 2 and phase 3 timings, openings, which businesses are allowed to open when. Can any of you guys comment on sort of a timeline specific for Santa Barbara of what sort of businesses we can expect to open when?
Yeah, I will. Don't know.
I could have said that.
Exactly. I got to take the easy ones sometimes, don't I? So again, the governor remains in control. So it's when the state allows counties and communities to go into another level. And so the governor has the broadest control, and then it's the county public health officer who has the local control and needs to amend his county public health order as well. And so we have to respect that process. This is retail and restaurants, which is great. The governor often tips his hands a little bit in his press conferences, but for instance, I heard him say it's a couple more weeks till you can get your haircut. All right, that's a cue that maybe the haircut, yeah, exactly. Haircut and nail salons, you know, kind of stuff, if safely done, might be next. I don't know where gyms fit in, and larger gatherings, I think, is further way off. I think they're still kind of trying to focus that allow some economic activity to occur, but keep those large gatherings at a minimum, just in case if people do get infected, it's not spread so dramatically like you see in some examples around the world where, you know, one gathering of 800 people just causes a whole bunch of havoc.
Right. So we have to be respectful of everyone's time. We're getting close to the week till 4:30. Take one or two more questions, Travis, if you know you see something there.
Yep. So this one's from George Tharakin. Again, sorry if I'm butchering people's names. This is a slightly different topic than we were discussing so far, but it might be interesting to discuss. When will antibody testing be widely available for Santa Barbara? There are tests now that have very low false positive rates that are already available in other jurisdictions. Is there something, discussions about that here?
Yeah, I really don't have good information for you on that. County Public Health is closer to the testing regimes, and antibody testings, from what I continue to read and hear, the science just isn't quite perfected yet. And so they're kind of still working for better systems. We do have community testing that's been up and running at Earl Warren. That's the swab test. About 2,700 people, I understand, have taken that test countywide, and it's been less than a 1% positive rate, which is good news. Antibody, I'm not an expert on that. I don't know.
So I guess the last one, there are a lot of comments, I guess, so far about homeless problem and opening State Street and sort of how those things look together. Somebody asked or kind of proposed, is the city going to consider opening, for example, a satellite police station or office somewhere in downtown to help facilitate this move?
No, because the police station is already 2 blocks off State Street. So that's about as good of a substation you could possibly have in the downtown area. So we will have police presence downtown. We'll have the ambassador red shirts downtown. We'll have those CityNet outreach teams downtown. And so we're aware of the issue, and we're going to try to do our best I can.
I'd just like to add before we go what Paul said earlier. This is only going to work when people feel safe to come out and to go out. And I think all the retailers, I know everyone in the downtown organization, Santa Barbara, what we're advising everybody is be safe, set a standard, wear a mask, draw your X's in front of your counter 6 feet, do everything that the RISE guidelines set forth by the county mandate. Make people feel safe, because Paul's right. We're not going to get international tourists, probably not going to get too many. We'll get drive tourists and people from driving up from LA, but we've really got to be careful. We've had a pretty good record in Santa Barbara County, and that's allowed Paul and his crew to go to the county, to go to the state, to get these breaks, to even have what we're calling a 2B. So far, the governor's plan for phase 2, phase 2B, phase 3 have fallen along pretty much the right timeline. So we just all got to make sure, and please, all locals, come downtown when you feel safe and enjoy it, because all the businesses really need your support. They're hanging by a thread.
Great. So I want to thank you, Paul. Thank you, Bob. I appreciate it. Charlie, Daniel, Travis, thank you for assisting here. And thanks to all the attendees. Really appreciate it. We will do this again soon and keep you posted. Anyway, stay safe, everybody, and welcome to downtown.
Yeah.
Take care.